Like I said in 2020, Michelle, everybody was talking about, well, we don't trust the media. I said, no. The media won. Yes, Biden won, but the media won. The media got people so against Trump and actually thinking that Biden was coherent and the best person for the job. They won. And you see the impact right now. They're taking the worst approval rating ever, maybe of anybody in the history of the White House. Yeah. And they are making her now to be, well, a shining star, a superstar, a civil rights leader, blah, 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 blah.
Welcome to the Michele Tafoya podcast.
If you are familiar with Outkick, it is a digital platform, and Dan Dakich is a daily regular. His show is called Don't At Me. You may know this guy. He coached under Bobby Knight, played under Bobby Knight at Indiana. If you don't know who Bobby Knight is, please do a quick search. You need to know. And then this guy coached and, at Bowling Green, had a few stints, ended up being a broadcaster at ESPN. He tells the rest of the story about how he transitioned from being a broadcaster of Big Ten basketball to a grumpy old commentator on Outkick. And I say that with all affection because I have so much fun when I go on Dan Dakich's show that I finally said, you got to come on my show. If you haven't heard him, you're going to really like his sort of acerbic take on things. And we're going to cover a lot of stuff. Dan Dakich, our guest, next. Dan Dakich, it's good to see you on my turf for a change. I get to flip the tables. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hope I can live up to how good you are on our show.
Oh, please.
Thank you.
Please. I gave your resume in the pre-roll, but it's really interesting to me how there are a handful of people who have come out of the world of sports, if you will. You being one of them, former player, former coach, yada, yada, and obviously a sports announcer. But you were brave enough to say, you know what, I can talk about other stuff. As we've seen, not everybody is willing to do that. Why was it important to you to do that?
Well, the timing was right for me. ESPN, frankly, paid me a lot of money to be a basketball analyst on Tuesday nights. And my kids were going through college, and my one wanted to go to Michigan. That's out-of-state tuition. He was a walk-on the basketball team. And, frankly, once they were out of college, I took a little bit more of and I think you did the same thing. I took a little bit more of a broader view of the world. Like, what do I want to be involved in? And I really enjoyed calling Big Ten games on ESPN because I enjoyed my producer, my director, Mike Tirico, Dave Fleming, Dave O'Brien, Jason Benet. I enjoyed the people, but those people were leaving ESPN. And ESPN was also losing the Big Ten. So it was kind of everything involved here. My kids are out. The world is exploding. I want to have a voice in a world, not in sports. My friends were leaving, and I did games with other people. I didn't enjoy it as much. Not that they were bad. It's just me. And I got a great offer from Clay and the folks at Outkick. And it just was like a perfect storm coming together for me, Michelle, in a world that, I got to a certain age and I'm like, I've never really had a voice. ESPN, as you know, networks, they don't want middle-aged white guys talking about politics. They'll let some others talk about politics.
Well, they don't want a certain angle on politics either. It's not just you. It's as Sage Steele will attest.
Yeah, that's a better way to put it. And frankly, I wanted to have a voice. And Outkick gave me that voice, combining it with sports. And, we have a unbelievably great team together. And it's just kind of worked for all of us.
It's awesome. It's so fun. I think it's just great. And I don't think people understand that you can be an expert at whatever level of expert people want to categorize you in a particular sport. For you, obviously, men's basketball, basketball in general. For me, it was always the NFL, although I did cover the NBA for a long time and the WNBA and many more. But for me, it was always the NFL. But that you could actually have a mind about other stuff. And have a really not only a mind about it, but actually a need to be part of the conversation and hopefully part of the solution. And as I saw people being more and more afraid to speak, that's when it really hit me that, oh my gosh. So I kind of felt like, and at Outkick, you have such a great license to do this, as do I, where I am, that you can say whatever you want, and it's encouraged. And so, but I have been amazed at how many people think that you and I and others of our ilk are just the outcasts. Did you find in your career in sports that, what percentage would you say were more to the left versus the right?
Yeah, that's interesting. I honestly didn't talk politics a whole lot until Donald Trump got involved. And the one thing I learned is outwardly, most people are to the left in sports.
Outwardly.
Inwardly, people are mostly to the right in sports. It's so funny. My wife's daughter, my stepdaughter, played softball at Harvard, and all of the kids that were on her softball team and at Harvard were to the left. All the parents that were paying the freight were to the right. And Michelle, I mean, all of them, except maybe one. And they probably get mad that I say that, but that's one of the things that I learned. And to your point about it, Seth Greenberg, who is a great basketball analyst and a dear friend, and we were watching, I think it was like the first debate of Biden or Hillary and Trump way back. And we weren't sexist, racist, nothing. We were just commenting. And we get this note from, our boss about, well, don't do that, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, wait a second here. Like, I get it if we're being divisive. I get it. We're just kind of commenting, not even anything, and internally, how some things are said to you that seemingly are no big deal.
Yeah.
But they kind of stick with you like, wait a second here. Now, hold on. I watched Jalen Rose lie like hell on national TV about, I think it was Jacob Blake's murder. And I know what's going on here. Just stop.
Yeah.
Just stop for a second. And I didn't say nothing because, I think it was at a time when I needed the money. Well, yeah. I still need the money, but I really needed it to put my kids through school. But it did stick with me. Like, hold on here a second. It ain't, we weren't doing anything. And so I think most people, and you saw it with Sage, I think you saw it with Sam Ponder. I think most people understand that here they understand that externally you are supposed to be a certain way, and that way is left. Mm-hmm. Internally, in Building 4 at ESPN, I know a lot of those guys. They're righter than me.
Okay.
But they can't say that. They can't act it. They don't want it.
Well, this is what's so weird, though.
Right.
It seems like the whole culture is that way. Like people have asked me, why is it that so many people in sports writing, sports casting, sports radio, whatever, they are lefties? And we know that a huge percentage of journalists in this country, and we see it and read it all the time, lean left. We also see it in colleges, the professorships.
Right.
You got very few conservative professors in colleges, at least outwardly. Like you said, there's a difference between inwardly and outwardly. But the sports part in particular is interesting, and I've been asked, why is that? And I think part of it, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is that, when you're on the left, you're supposed to be more of a virtuous person and an empathetic person and really open-minded and all this. And that's cooler, I guess.
I agree.
I don't know. What do you think?
I totally agree. I've always said this. Actually, there's a hand gesture that I do when I hear about how the left is so virtuous. And it's never mind. I don't do it in front of women, but
okay. I just had an image. I had an image pop into my brain.
Yeah. I totally agree when you said it's cooler. I've always said this about every dorky sports writer and every politician. I say this, and it's funny. I've had a lot of politicians and a lot of people say, man, I've thought about what you're saying, and you're right. they all were dorks, nerds, whatever, smart. And all of a sudden, they weren't necessarily paid attention to. Like I tell people all the time, when I was a junior in high school, I scored 33 or whatever in the state championships. And all of a sudden, I got used to interviews and I got used to that stuff because Indiana's such, I'm not any good, but Indiana's such a big basketball state.
Right.
That in the state finals, the whole state's watching, you become somebody they know. And
yes,
well, most people that are guys, I don't think women necessarily, but guys are these nerds. I mean, smart, very smart. And all of a sudden they get attention. And politicians, you know, they get attention and they don't know how to handle it. And I think they always filter back to the left because of what you just said. It is seemingly more inclusive. It is seemingly nicer. And I also say every writer in America, white dude, loves Springsteen because Bruce Springsteen makes them seem cool. They're the least cool human beings alive, but they're all pizza stained and they can't wait till the buffet at the game and all that.
Yeah.
But, excuse me, but
that's okay.
But Springsteen makes them cool. I swear to God, just pay attention to this from now on. Every writer, you'd be like, oh man, I love Springsteen. Okay. But it's a perception that being on the left makes you more tolerant, more accepting, and more accepted. And as we've seen, certainly over the last 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it is, 8 years, that's certainly not the case. I mean, it is more intolerant. It is more angry. It is more divisive being on that side. And I think that's been exposed, but I don't think it's changing anyway. I've said this, Michelle, and I'm curious. I mean, what the hell are we teaching in journalism school? Like Indiana has this great journalism school. What the hell are they teaching that puts you as a bias, that puts you on CBS, NBC, ABC, and you don't want to report what's actual, you want to report it in a slanted way? I don't get that, Michelle. I don't get that at all.
It's activism in journalism. You
That's
and I
right.
talked about this before, and I'm not exactly sure what the root of it is, but I have a feeling it's pretty pernicious, pretty sinister, actually. And I don't mean that these people are sinister. They think they're doing the right thing, many of them, these young, idealistic journalists coming out and starting to work in the press, and they think, oh, I've got to save the world, or I've got to help save the world, and so therefore I got to be anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian or whatever slant that they have been taught. And you know, I got to tell you, I've seen some of the books out there that are now being fed to even high school students.
Oh.
And my eyes are huge. I'm like, this doesn't even give two sides of an argument. It just, so it is amazing. And I do think when you have the press, when you have Hollywood, the cool folks, right? And the athletes in Hollywood now, I think, are so intertwined that you really can't separate them in many cases. And you've got academia, the teachers, boy, you're just churning out people the way that you want them to think and act and live and present themselves. But I think this is where I think it's pernicious and a little sinister, that it has its roots from long ago. And we are right now, and have probably been for the last 10, 15 years, seeing this come to full bloom.
Well, you know, one of the things that I think most people would agree on, Bill Clinton would be a moderate conservative right now. I think, you know, we've never really worried, at least I haven't. Now it's probably the number one issue that I pay attention to. I'm never worried about immigration or illegal immigrants, because every president, I don't care whether it's Reagan, I don't care who it was, you can go to Clinton, you can go to the Bushes, you can go to anybody, has always discussed, hey, look, you got to have closed borders.
Right.
And now all of a sudden we're in a position where, to use your term of being sinister, I think there's absolutely, there can be no rational way to describe lawlessness in our country. District attorneys, we have one here, a prosecutor here in Indianapolis that is so weak that it's, you know, and our murder rate is through the roof. There's no logical explanation, you know, for it. And one of the funniest things is there's a guy at ESPN who's a good friend of mine. I'm not going to say his name because I didn't ask him for permission. But when I would go to Harvard, I'd go to the bookstore and I would send him pictures of the books at Harvard. And they were so ridiculous They were like so anti-straight, male, white. They didn't even try to hide it.
Yeah.
And I'd say, hey, here's the latest one I'm going to get for my flight home or my drive home or whatever it is. But maybe, just maybe, these things were hidden in the past and now they're just in the open. Maybe we just didn't pay attention because it wasn't so dramatic. Ronald Reagan made fun of Democrats, but it wasn't such a dramatic split, at least on logical issues of the day, like an economy or like crime or like, or like immigration. Sure, there was differences in abortion and some social issues, but not on the common sense issues that bring Americans together. Immigration should be a non-issue.
Absolutely.
I mean, come on. What are we talking? Crime should be a non-issue. It should be, the economy working for us shouldn't be how does Joe Biden on a $270,000, $170,000 salary own a $5 million mansion in Rehoboth Beach and two other? I mean, come on. That's both parties would agree that's not right. And now it's boom and boom, and that's it.
It's really, it really does feel like, for the first time in my lifetime, and I went to Berkeley, that we're on a real cusp of something big and scary. When we come back from a quick break, I want to get into something that is sort of one of these nebulous ideas that has been, you referenced it a little bit, about the white male patriarchy, just definitions of masculinity that are somehow becoming, for whatever reason, pertinent to some people. We'll get into that next. I love the people at besthotgrill.com. They make the incredible Solaire infrared grills that heat up in just 3 minutes to searing heat and make the juiciest grilled food you're ever going to taste. I mean it, but you don't have to just take my word for it. They have a try before you buy program with the Solaire demo rental program for only $47. You can use a Solaire infrared grill for 2 weekends and the week in between without a salesman breathing down your neck. You can test it for its versatility with steak, chicken, fish, pork, veggies, all the foods your family loves. Inspect Solaire's quality construction and experience firsthand Solaire's hot and fast performance. This thing is amazing. And at the end of the demo, just wipe it down, put it in the box for a UPS pickup. Solaire makes it easy. And then you'll receive a coupon for $47 off any new Solaire infrared grill. The Solaire demo rental program will convince you why Solaire is truly, it's going to be the last grill you ever buy. Learn more about the demo program and these amazing USA-made grills. It's one of the many things I love about this company. Their products are made in the USA at besthotgrill.com. That's besthotgrill.com. Solaire demo rental program. Find it at besthotgrill.com. Masculinity. So never before had I heard the term toxic masculinity until probably the last 3, 4, maybe longer. And I had someone tell me, oh gosh, I've become an auntie and I'm so excited to teach my little niece about toxic masculinity in all seriousness. And I thought to myself, that's what you want to teach her. So you're an athlete, you've been a coach. You and I agree there's a difference between men and women, and that should be acknowledged in sport and other places. But this idea of toxic versus, and Mina Kimes of ESPN recently talked about a different kind of masculinity, a Tim Walz kind of masculinity that maybe some people can relate to other than the girl, I'm an NFL player. I mean, can't people just be freaking people?
Yes. Biology dictates people are different. There's a book called Wild at Heart, and it's a book that I gave my son, my 2 nephews that are all the same age, and I said, read this book. It basically gives men permission to be men, not be jackasses, not be, whatever, but it gives men permission to be men. And I've said forever, again, I go back to just pure logic. You said there are differences in men and women. Like, really? No shit, Sherlock.
Like we have to
right?
state that? Yeah.
Right. I mean, we're talking about logic here. And I don't understand, like, toxic masculinity, I get it. Somebody wants to describe somebody that, bullies or abuses women or is disrespectful in every way. But, things I've read where things like opening a door for a woman. Like, I will never walk in front of a woman in a door, and I always look at him and I say, look, my mother's 87 years old. She's still alive. If she knew I walked in front of you, she'd kill me.
Yeah.
And and
but see, even that, you're feeling like you have to make an excuse for being a gentleman.
That's right. That you made my point. That's exactly right. I feel like I had to say why. Like, I would never. My mother taught me never to ask a woman's age, and I don't even think I knew her age until I don't even know when. Like maybe we had a party for her on her 70th birthday, or I don't even know her age. So it's one of those things where now I look at it and I say, well, that's so vague. That's just, you can say whatever you like. If you don't like somebody's stance on abortion, let's just say toxic masculinity,
right.
Or you don't like somebody's game, a female tennis player, that's just toxic masculinity. You don't like,
or you're a misogynist,
or you don't like Leah Thomas competing against Riley Gaines. Well, that's just your toxic masculinity. You're not inclusive. No. It's none of that. It's, in most cases, just logic. And, people have talked about this, Michelle. The left only believes in science when it fits their science or that fits their brain.
Exactly.
Like, there is no question. And like Serena Williams settled the argument. I think it was on like one of the shows, like, hey, look,
Letterman,
I lost the 250th player in the men's team. I got my ass beat by.
Yeah.
I mean, so why are we even discussing whether or not this is a thing? And it's simply because, in my opinion, we are discussing this because I swear to God, the left's motto is divide and conquer in all areas.
Yeah.
And if we can divide you about what sexes should be playing against what sexes and whether boys and girls are the same, or even what the hell is a woman, that's dividing us at our core. And I swear to God, in my opinion, they'll stop at nothing to try to divide and ultimately conquer, I guess.
No, I think that's right. And I think when I had an attorney on my show, a civil rights lawyer who happened to be gay, and he fought for gay civil rights. And he talked about how once that the gay community, the LGB community, got marriage, got, some of the rights that they had really been fighting for, and things were going well, all of the rainbow, the group in the rainbow that wanted to continue to raise funds and support these people were feeling, well, they don't really need us. Shoot, our jobs are going to go away. So how do we, let's add the T and the Q and the RST, let's add all the other letters because we got to keep it, we got to keep this thing going. This was from a gay man who represented gays in civil liberty suits. So I trust him on this. You and I both know Tammy Bruce. She's a Fox News contributor. Gay woman, used to be full on lefty. She was the president of the National Organization of Women. And she realized one day when they were trying to solve problems and someone said, yeah, we don't want to solve all of them. And she was like, wait, what? We don't want to solve what? Well, we need to be here when, just in case they need us again. So it is really interesting how you see if we become accepting of one division, then they'll find another one. So now not only is it male versus female, and we've got the trans element in there in sport, now we have variations on masculinity. So toxic. Now we've got the Tim Walz coalition of masculinity. Someone there's a term called tonic masculinity. So it's freaking me out. And you know what? More than anything, it's pissing me off.
Yeah, it pisses you off.
Yeah, it does.
To your point, like, now people, because I think Robert Kennedy Jr. is bringing things to our attention, doctors almost got to keep you sick to be relevant, right? I mean, when you're talking about people needing their jobs, I always go back. I actually have a couple mottos I live by. One of them is kindness equals weakness, and the other one is be careful what you wish for. And both of them are entwined in what you're talking about with the LGBT community. I don't know if it's kindness that allowed people to give gay marriage, but I think there's a certain element of that, and that showed weakness. If we can get this, now we can get this, now we can get this, now we can get this. And maybe there are a lot of things that that community needs and should get.
Right.
But what Tammy Bruce said is so accurate. We can't get everything because we want to be still needed. We want to still be out here doing this.
Yeah.
And look, I just wish that you talk about being pissed off. I just wish you've probably had stories written about you. Probably 99% of you are good, about 50-50 on me. Okay. And every time I've read one, it's never been completely accurate. It's always been in a certain way. And I learned this back when I was working for Coach Knight. I'd be like, yeah, that didn't happen. No, that's not, no, I was there. That didn't happen that way. And so I always think there's a backstory. I do. I always think there's something else here. So when I see an article or somebody, saying, well, we need to do more for this, I always think about why does that person feel like we have to do more? What are they involved in? And invariably, somehow they are connected either financially, socially, whatever, to that community. But when you control the media, I said this in 2020, all right? When you control the media, which the LGBTQ has the media because you can't go against them. There's two shows that are awesome. 30 Rock is unbelievable. 30 Rock is like, Tracy Jordan talks about the LGBT community that is against him. He goes, oh, no, that's the most organized of all communities. We can't piss them off, right? Right. So when you get that, like I said in 2020, Michelle, everybody was talking about, well, we don't trust the media. I said, no. The media won. Yes, Biden won, but the media won. The media got people so against Trump and actually thinking that Biden was coherent and the best person for the job. They won. And you see the impact right now. They're taking the worst approval rating ever, maybe of anybody in the history of the White House. Yeah. And they are making her now to be, well, a shining star, a superstar, a civil rights leader, blah, 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 blah. It's the same thing. It's no different than what has happened with the LGBTQ, whatever community. You got the media. I don't know all the numbers.
It's okay. We know what you mean.
When you have the media, you have the power. And I swear to God, 2020 made the media more powerful than ever, even though people are saying, I hate the media. I don't trust. No. Think about what they're doing right now with Kamala Harris. Think about
Tim Walz
with Joe Biden in 2020 when he was literally, I assume, in his basement. They made that man president of the United States of America. They're making this woman, I believe, but I believe in a lot of things. I grew up in Gary, Indiana. Guy that taught me how to shoot a jump shot, got indicted, convicted of voter fraud, paving driveways in East Chicago. He escaped to He escaped to Mykonos. He lives
Seriously?
in Mykonos, he lives in Mykonos, Greece now.
Wow.
He called my radio show one day. Hey, Danny, we're here at a wedding. I go, hey, man, I don't know who this is. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? But he was gonna come to your city. He was 62. He was gonna face like 30 years in federal penitentiary in Minnesota. And he left. So I know what happens in elections. One of the guys running for I think it was mayor, not mayor, it wasn't mayor. It was like, I don't know, whatever the hell it is in Gary, Indiana, came to my house when I was a kid and asked my dad if he could register the empty lot next to our house and get votes from it. And my dad's like, well, we don't own the thing. The neighbor does. So we went to the neighbor. So when people tell me there's no voter fraud, when people tell me there's no election interference, I say, I've seen it. Mm-hmm. The guy that taught me to shoot a jump shot.
Yeah.
You can look him up. Frankie Colensis, East Chicago, Indiana. Gone.
Well, it is amazing that the media expects you to look. First of all, half of the votes during the primaries in 2020, everything was late. We weren't finding results. All this stuff was going on. We had all these questions. We had mail-in ballots because of the COVID, all the stuff, right? But as soon as that election was over, like the next day, they said that was the freest, fairest election in American history.
Right.
How do you know that in 12 hours? How do you know? But if you repeat a lie often enough, Dan, it becomes truth in a lot of people's minds. And so people just took that line. And if you even questioned anything in 2020, whether you questioned the vaccine, whether you questioned the origins of COVID, whether you questioned the use of ivermectin, whether you questioned how the election went the way it did, even if you were just questioning it, you're a curious human with questions. You were called all kinds of things, and more often than not, you were canceled. And it was this unbelievable turn of events in American history, in my mind, that just scared the crap out of a lot of people. But I think it also energized a lot of people like you and me.
Yes. You know what the difference between a conspiracy theory and the truth is?
What's that?
About 6 months.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, a conspiracy theory that I got called when I was when I left radio and came to Outkick, because they made me make a choice whether I could do Outkick or work for this particular station. Guy named Greg Doyle, writer, wrote a hit piece, just crushed me. We used to be friends, we're not. And he said, I'm moving to a far right conspiracy theory website, Outkick.
That's what he called you.
Yeah. Okay. And my thought was, now that we've seen ivermectin and all the things that you just talked about, well, what he really was saying was a compliment, meaning he's moving to a place of free thought.
Yeah.
He's moving to a place of free speech, and independent thought, free speech, and the ability to comment on those two things, meaning I can comment of my thought and I have free speech. So I've got this wide berth that I wouldn't have, or I don't have on the afternoon radio show that I do, that I wouldn't have anywhere else. So It was a compliment, actually, to be considered a far-right conspiracy theory now that we've seen how all these things play out. Let me tell you, let me ask you, here's another one. Trump and anybody that said, wait a second, close the borders, they're opening prisons in Venezuela and other places. When Trump said that, they called him xenophobic. They called him racist. How are we doing in Chicago, where 32 armed guys just went into an apartment building? How are we doing in Aurora, Colorado? How are we doing in a number of other places? Turns out to be right. Maybe we should just be unbiased and investigative as opposed to closed-minded. Maybe that would help us a little bit.
It certainly would. And I think that people think these things sound so outlandish until you discover, whoa, that actually happened. Wow. Okay. Well,
I started paying attention to the border, about 3 or 4 years ago. My athletic director, when I was at Bowling Green, Paul Krebs, became the athletic director at New Mexico. And he retired, and he's living in Albuquerque, which is not on the border.
Right.
But before all this really broke, about 4 years ago, he's like, we're having dinner. He came to Indy, we're having dinner. He goes, Dan, this border thing is unbelievable. He goes, we live 3 hours or whatever it is north, and we literally have illegal immigrants running through our backyards. And I'm like, he goes, Dan, I live in a gated community. He goes, I'm just telling you. He goes, this is going everywhere. And then I had a couple guys on my Outkick show. One was the head of the Border Patrol in Arizona. And they're like, Dan, you got to understand now they have let more people in than the entire state of Alabama. Now, sure, there are some dreamers. I get all whatever you want to call them and all that. But when Trump said they're opening prisons, that made total sense to me. I mean, of course they are. If you're letting everybody in, we've already seen, what was it today? Kathy Hochul, her personal assistant, she's married to, or whatever the hell they are, Chinese spies, or she's a Chinese. I mean, you don't think if they're doing it through a vetting system, they're not going to do it through an unvetted system to bring people? Right. What are you, nuts? It's just, again, I go back to this, Michelle, common freaking sense.
Yep. Yep. And you wonder if common frickin' sense is going to rear its head in this upcoming extremely important election. Woo. Our final thought with Dan Dakich right after this. Hey, economists are warning that massive tax hikes could devastate your IRA and 401k account as the stock market is bracing for impact. With inflation on the rise and global uncertainty looming, it's clear why central banks and savvy Americans are turning to gold. In times like this, Proverbs 21:20 reminds us to preserve what we've built. Well, right now, that wisdom points us toward gold. If you haven't had your eye on gold, maybe you want to make it a priority. I'm urging you to call my friends at Priority Gold to find out how they can help you diversify your savings with physical gold and silver. Call 1-800-405-GOLD or visit PriorityGold.com/golden for a free gold info guide. Plus, see if you qualify for free shipping and storage. Act now to get your portfolio working for you while the market is golden. Call 1-800-405-GOLD to speak with a gold specialist or visit PriorityGold.com/golden to learn more. That's 1-800-405-GOLD or PriorityGold.com/golden. So people are talking about common sense, and I believe there's a strong yearning for it. But as you said earlier, the media do such a good job of painting pictures for people. They're painting a picture that somehow Kamala Harris has brought joy and enthusiasm to the world, and that Tim Walz is this perfect example of masculinity. And on the other hand, we've got two crazy people. That's the way they've painted it. And I think, I don't know really what to expect. What do you think is going to happen this time around?
You know what? I'm old enough to remember when Jimmy Carter, and I say this all the time, Jimmy Carter was the worst president of my lifetime. And again, here's what I based that on then. I saw gas prices jump. I saw gas lines.
I did too.
I never heard the word inflation until Jimmy Carter. My mom and dad, public school teachers, they were in the same school system, so they got paid the same time every other Friday. And my mother would go shopping on that Friday after school, and that's all you ate. Like if you ate all the cookies, there were no more for the next 2 weeks.
Right.
But on that 2 weeks, she would bring home McDonald's as a treat for her, right? Yeah. And I remember she's like, yeah, we can't, we're going to have liver. I'll never forget on a Friday. I'm like, what are you talking about liver? Like my brother and I were like, but because prices were so out of control and so I always paid attention to that. But here's why Jimmy Carter got elected. And if you go back and look, he smiled. He had this, I think, creepy ass smile. But every time you saw him, he was, smiling. And if you go back and pay attention to and I did, the reasons people voted for him because they thought he was this nice Southern gentleman. And I caution people, particularly Republicans, stop putting pictures, even though they're in ads criticizing Kamala Harris, of her smiling. Quit putting pictures of her dancing. Quit thinking that I think Republicans in the national level are making a hell of a mistake doing that. I really do. Because regardless, I would put her frowning constantly. I would put her frowning next to Biden, her saying Bidenomics is working and all the other things. But I swear to you, I think she's going to win because of two things. I think people get fooled. I actually had, my stepdaughter, Harvard graduate, start telling us how smart it was that she is stopping grocery store price gouging. And we're like, dude, the margin is 2.1% on groceries. That's not gouging, that's surviving when your profit margin is 2.1%. But you can't convince people because my point is the external fools us. The internal, which I'm describing as actual policy, actual what you're doing, not what you're saying, is being fooled by the external, the smiling, dancing. I'm going to put a cap on. It scares the out of me. because I think people are being fooled. And I go back to Jimmy Carter fooling them with a damn smile and a soft tone, and people fell for it.
It's you just gave me a stomach ache. I'll be honest. I feel like I want to throw up.
Me too.
I hope you're freaking wrong.
I do too.
But I don't know. I really don't know. And all I can do is try to influence any way that I can. Living
That's right.
Living in Tim Walz's Minnesota sucks. And someone asked me the other day outright on Twitter, basically why I still live here. And it's a very personal and temporary reason. And I'm not going to say it because I'm not going to do that to my family. But I will tell you that the moving trucks will be coming. It's just not today. And the moving trucks will be coming because I can't take this anymore. And I'm not alone. We've had a net negative migration. It breaks my heart. And I wish I could be part of the solution.
Michele.
Yeah.
Michele, in Indianapolis, which you've been here millions of times, and everybody that comes says, oh man, this is the greatest big city or big event,
city,
sports city, right?
Yeah.
Let me tell you what happened here. So what happened here, and it's still ongoing, is that idiots burnt the place down. And the mayor has never explained where he was. Now, he has admitted to going to rehab at different times. And I asked one of the leading police officers, I said, well, where was the mayor? He said, the rumors that you hear are true. So the place gets burnt down. Literally, they had the NCAA tournament here after, and there were literal plywood paintings on the building or on the businesses that were no longer here to fool you. So if you walked around, you don't see a brown plywood. You see something with basketballs and you think it's a business. That's what they did. Still do. The murder rate is beyond anything we've ever seen here over the last 3 years. That guy, that mayor, got reelected. I think he got 70% of the vote. I think. Because I don't even know why. And the newspaper here was dumb enough or Democrat enough, liberal enough, to endorse this guy. And it's stunning to me how people, and I say this is my new thing on Twitter, no U.S. citizen with a rational, informed brain can vote Harris. Now, I get it, woman of color. You're of color. Maybe you want to vote for her. I get it. You're a lifetime liberal. You're going to vote for her. But if you're rational and you take all this external crap out and you really pay attention, nobody could have voted for Joe Hogsett as the mayor of Indianapolis either. And that's what scares the living crap, because there's no policy, there's no achievement, there's nothing looking forward. In fact, it really what it is mimicking what Donald Trump is doing after criticizing, critiquing, crushing, calling him racist and everything else for building a wall. Yeah. It's literal insanity to me what's going on here. But again, if you're informed, I hope enough informed people with U.S. citizens with functioning brains vote the way to save our country.
And I don't think it's a stretch to say save our country. I mean,
I don't either.
Nikki Haley's whole slogan was "We've got a country to save," and yes. it's true. And I just got back from Ireland. They're going through some crap that's unbelievable. The UK is going through crap that's unbelievable. Brazil is now banning free speech. They're banning Twitter in Brazil. The world we're in some sort of like episode of the Twilight Zone, but people hate Trump enough to where they'd probably vote for a cat if that was the only option.
I think you're right. I read today where somebody said, George Karl, former NBA coach, said, reason I'm voting, whatever. He's holding up a girl, little daughter, saying, abortion rights is why I'm voting for Kamala Harris. And I'm thinking, boy, is that the irony, right? You're holding up a little girl and talking about abortion. But he said something like, preserving, what did he say? Preserving voting, like preserving elections. And I'm thinking to myself, you got to be out of your mind. What are you talking about?
You know, we're in two different Americas. We're in two different Americas. You can have people say that stuff up and down, backward and forwards, and then you can have the other side say, "What are you talking about?" And by the way, you pulled the All-Star game out of Atlanta only to return it there because your fears were unfounded. And now but no one remembers this stuff. I don't get it.
You know, you and I can sit here and talk till we're blue in the face.
Yeah, we could.
But my biggest problem is I can't believe that people aren't paying attention. I had a woman on Twitter say that if it was up to Donald Trump, he would take away women's reproductive rights. On Twitter today, some guy. I go, well, what? Michelle, look, I drink sometimes, okay? My wife and I like to have a bottle of wine, okay? So maybe I missed it. But the dude was president for 4 freaking years.
Yeah, he was.
And I think women still have reproductive freaking rights.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, what are you talking about? He's going to take away reproductive rights.
Yeah, even though he just said he's going to have the government and insurance pay for IVF, which is very pro reproductive rights, said the woman who went through IVF twice. So, and has said no national ban. They don't care what he says.
No.
They care what Kamala doesn't say because they like it that she's not talking because she can't be criticized. Oh, you're right. You and I could go on till we're blue or red in the face. I prefer red, but it's been great and I'd love to do it again. But anyway, he is Dan Dakich. You find him on Outkick. Don't At Me is the name of his show. But all you really need to know is Dan Dakich. And as you can see, he really doesn't hold back very much. So it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Dan, thank you so much.